Louie T. Welcome to this Louie T Network exclusive, ranking the 8 head coaching vacancies and the 4 GM openings around the National Football League. So much change is taking place, not just in the NFL ranks, also in the collegiate ranks, as Nick Saban has stepped down from Alabama. I think we're seeing a bit of a changing of the guard, so to speak. It made me think of this movie called The Old Guard, right? And you're seeing the oldest coaches retire all in the same year, or be moved on from. I shouldn't say retire, because Saban, of the 3 eldest coaches that were prominent in college football and the NFL, was the only one to retire, right? Saban retired from Alabama at the age of 72. Pete Carroll was fired. They've tried to reassign him and give him a less advisory role. But the fact of the matter is, Pete said he pretty much wanted to keep his job, and they said no. So they fired him in Seattle. He's 72. And then Bill Belichick came to a mutual parting of ways with the Patriots today, and he's 71. So we're seeing some of these elder statesmen, guys who have been highly regarded and revered in their individual sports, being moved on from. It kind of feels like when we started to see those older quarterbacks, the Peyton Mannings and the Ben Roethlisbergers and the Drew Breeses of the world, start to be ushered out. And you were like, man, what is the league going to look like without these guys? And that's kind of where we are now. But with Bill Belichick and the Patriots mutually agreeing to part ways, that extends the number of openings in the NFL to 8. So literally a quarter of the league has vacancies at the head coaching position right now. And of those 8 teams, 4 have GM jobs open as well. So an eighth of the league are looking for GMs, and a quarter of the league is currently looking for NFL head coaches. So I wanted to rank, and I want you guys to tell me what you think and what you think the order is. I was going to do this on the podcast, but really I just want to devote tomorrow's podcast episode strictly to the playoffs. We got 5 games? We got a doubleheader on Saturday, a tripleheader on Sunday, and a game on Monday. So you got 6 games over the weekend. I really want to just talk about that tomorrow, really break down each game and give analysis on what I think is going to happen, and also hear from you guys as to what you think is going to occur in those games. So wanted to separate the two. So I'm going to do this here today. And so I don't think we're going to see any more openings. The Bears had mulled over theirs. They made a decision yesterday. Patriots were the last domino, so to speak, to fall. We didn't know what they were going to do. I think we're out of surprises. The Titans surprised us. The Seahawks surprised us. I think we're done with surprises. Surprise! We're going to move on from our coach. I think that's done now. So I think we've settled in on the amount of openings that are going to happen this coaching cycle. And now let's see where these openings rank. If you were a GM, how would you look at these? I'll tell you how I base my decision-making with these openings as a coach, because it's different as a head coach than it is a GM. You're thinking about different things, right? We've always talked about short-term versus long-term, right? GM is more, it's more of a macro approach. You're taking a micro and a macro approach if you're a GM. You want to win now, obviously, but you also have to think about the future. If you're a head coach, you don't have to think about the future. You're thinking about right now, right? I got to win now because I won't be here if we don't win. So let's get to the 8 vacancies. Let's start there. What are the 8 vacancies right now in the NFL? So we had 3 coaches fired in season. Okay. Chargers fired their head coach in season. Raiders fired their coach in season. Panthers fired their coach in season. So we already had 3 vacancies coming into the offseason. Then the Falcons were the first to go ahead and move on from their coach. They got rid of Arthur Smith immediately after the season. Essentially, that Sunday night, he was already done. Then the Commanders, first thing, Monday morning, Black Monday, got rid of Ronald Rivera. The Seahawks, or rather the Titans, surprised us with the Mike Vrabel firing. Didn't see that one coming. And then the Seahawks surprised us with the firing of Pete Carroll. And then we got the news that the Patriots were going to mutually part ways with Bill Belichick today. So that brings the total to 8. Now let's talk about these 8 job openings. And here's what I assess. Here's what I look at, right? When I'm thinking about a job opening, if I'm a GM, I'm taking into consideration everything from the roster, the cap space, the draft capital, ownership, how stable is the franchise. These are all things that matter to me. As a head coach, cap space doesn't matter as much. Draft capital, it depends on what the situation is. That may come into play. But really, do you have a quarterback? And what's the roster look like? And how do I fit into the equation, right? How stable is the ownership group? How stable is the owner? How stable is the franchise as a whole? Because I don't want to be Frank Reich taking a job, thinking it's a 5-year deal, moving my family to that area only to be fired 11 games in. I don't want to do that, right? So clearly, these are things that would matter to me as a head coach. So let's go through where each of these teams rank in my estimation. Some of this is facts, like hard data, numbers, and then some of it is opinionated. It's my opinion, right? So some of it is subjective and some of it is factual. So let's start with cap space. That's something that isn't subjective. This is factual. These are hard numbers, right? So cap space wise, you want to be in a healthy spot if you're trying to attract a GM. It could be a deterrent. It doesn't have to be, but it can be a deterrent when trying to lure a GM there. I want to be able to come in and have flexibility. I don't want to come in and have to dig myself out of a hole immediately. But again, if you're going to turn the roster over anyway, that's probably going to help you get yourself where you need to be from a cap situation. It's not impossible. And again, if you're going to find someone that's willing to do it, but it still makes it a lot harder to attract the type of talent that you probably are looking for if you are going after a top tier GM candidate. That said, cap space, the Washington Commanders rank first in cap space among these 8 teams with $86 million of cap space available as of today. Coming in second is the Tennessee Titans, all right, at $77 million. So they've got the second most cap space in the league and the second most among the 8 teams with an opening for head coach. Third on this list are the New England Patriots. They also are third in the league with $75 million worth of cap space. So they've got a lot of flexibility and a lot of opportunities to make some moves this offseason. Coming in on this list at fourth is the Las Vegas Raiders. They're 9th in the league with $55 million worth of cap space. So they've got quite a bit of flexibility there. Coming in at 5th on this list are the Carolina Panthers. They have $40 million worth of cap space, good for 13th most in the league. Coming in at 6th on this list are the Atlanta Falcons, who have $37 million worth of free cap space at this current juncture, good for 16th in the league. So right smack dab in the middle are the Atlanta Falcons. Then you get into the teams that aren't doing as well financially right now as we sit here on January the 11th. The Seattle Seahawks, who are 23rd in the league right now with just a shade over $4 million worth of cap space. And then lastly, the Chargers are in salary cap hell. They are 29th in the league. They are $34 million over the cap as we speak. So they've got some tough decisions to make. We knew that going into the offseason. They're going to have to either restructure some deals, move on from some guys, things of that nature. So they've got quite the journey ahead of them. But this is what we do. We talk about this stuff every year. Oh my God, this team is this, that, and third over the cap. And then boom, voila, they'll be under the cap in no time. But they're going to have to make some tough decisions. Like Khalil Mack is making a boatload of money. He was the best player on your defense last year. Are you going to move on from him? Because you can get out of it and you'll save a lot of money under the cap. But can you afford to move on from a player like that if you're trying to win? I don't know. These are the questions that they'll have to answer in Los Angeles with the Chargers. So that's the cap space situation for all the teams. And we'll revisit this when we start talking about these teams individually. Draft picks. To me, as a GM, if I'm coming in, cap space is huge. So are draft picks, draft capital, right? So we'll just go through each team's situation from a draft standpoint. Chargers, 8 total draft picks, number 5 overall in the first round. So they're in a healthy spot from a draft pick perspective. Panthers, only 4 total draft picks. Again, this is not an attractive job. We'll talk as to why as we go through this exercise, but you can already imagine that this is going to be a tough sell in this offseason. Look, there are only 32 of these jobs, whether you're talking head coach or general manager, somebody's going to take the job. But if I've got options, I'm not taking the Panthers job, right? And they have no first round pick, as we are well aware, but they do have the 33rd pick overall in the draft, but they do not have a first round pick this year. That belongs to the Chicago Bears. As we know, it's the number 1 overall pick. The Atlanta Falcons have 7 total draft picks, number 8 overall, and they have 4 picks in the top 100. So that's a really good situation right now with the Falcons. And we'll talk more about their situation and how that can benefit them in their quest to find the next head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. The Las Vegas Raiders have 9 total picks. They have the 13th overall pick. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with that 13th overall pick, because the real question is, when are you going to get a quarterback? Are you going to get one in free agency? Is Russell Wilson going to fit what you're trying to do? Or are you going to get one in the draft? So that remains to be seen, but that's an interesting situation there in Vegas. The Commanders have 9 total draft picks. They have the number 2 overall pick in the draft, and they have 5 picks in the top 100. And if you extend it to the beginning of the 4th round, day 3, they have 6 picks in the top 103. So they've got a lot of draft capital. They've got early draft capital. They've got a ton of cap space, the most in the NFL. Again, we'll get to all of that as we continue to go through this this exercise. Seattle Seahawks, they have 6 total draft picks, and they have the number 16 overall pick in the draft currently. So solid situation. We'll see how they maneuver there as we go through this process. Patriots have 7 total draft picks, the number 3 overall selection. So they're sitting in a really good spot. Remember, the Seahawks also, just to add to the Seahawks real quick, they traded their 2nd round pick to the New York Giants for Leonard Williams. So they do not have a 2nd round pick as well. Not that that really is that impactful, but it matters in the grand scheme of things. Just thought I'd bring that up. And then finally, the Tennessee Titans have 8 total draft selections in the upcoming drafts, number 7 overall. And so they sit in a pretty solid spot. So now we get to what I think is the most important question if you are a prospective GM or head coach. I think this is the category that if you're a head coach, this is the one you're looking at the most. Because if you don't have this, then I better have resources to get this, or I'm not going to be successful, right? And it's quarterback. Do you have a quarterback? So the Chargers clearly have a quarterback, and they've got the best quarterback of all of the openings here by far and away, right? If I'm a head coach, I'm trying to get to the Chargers. That's where I want to go ultimately, because I know I can win with number 10. The question is, can I do enough around 10 and on the defensive side? Can I find the right guys? And because all of the pieces are there. You add a piece here, a piece there, and you can win immediately in Los Angeles with the Chargers because of Justin Herbert. The Panthers have a quarterback. Whether you like him or not, They just drafted him #1 overall last year. He's not going anywhere. Can you get Bryce Young to play the type of football that led the Panthers to trade up from 9 to #1 last year and give up this year's first-round pick? Can you get, and DJ Moore, I may add, can you get the value, the return on investment out of Bryce Young? Whether you like him or not, they've got a quarterback. Figure it out. Falcons don't have a quarterback. Raiders don't have a quarterback. Commanders don't have a quarterback. Seahawks have a quarterback, but it's Geno Smith, okay? So take it with a grain of salt, right? Patriots don't have a quarterback. Titans do have a quarterback. Now, he's not established, and we're not sure, but they do have a starting quarterback going into next season, and his name is Will Levis. We'll see how that turns out. But if you're taking the Titans job, you're taking it with the assumption that Will Levis is your starting quarterback heading into training camp, okay? And then my last category that I took into consideration when making up my list of these openings and where they rank, organizational stability / owner, right? So how stable is your organization, and how is your owner perceived around league circles? Do you have good ownership, trustworthy ownership, patient ownership, et cetera, et cetera? Is the owner going to allow you to make the decisions, the moves that you want to make without meddling? These are the types of things you have to ask yourself if you're a potential GM or even a head coach. Because if you have a very meddlesome head coach or owner, he's going to not only meddle in the affairs of the general manager, but it's going to trickle down to you and personnel decisions and what you can and can't do on the field, who's playing, who's not playing, those types of things. You never want to be in that situation. So that's something that I would take into consideration when I'm assessing these openings. So I rated these jobs in this particular category, owner or organizational stability / owner, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest stability. You're as functional and stable as it gets in the NFL, to 1, which is as dysfunctional as it gets, and you would like to stay as far away from that job if at all possible. So the Chargers' organizational stability for me right now is a 2.5. And I look at their situation with their ownership group, the Spanos. Those are some really tricky individuals and fellas to kind of navigate. You really don't know what you're going to get from them. Notoriously, they had been cheap in the past. They've been spending money here of late, which is why their cap situation is the way that it is. They went for it. I'm not upset at a team that goes for it. They just didn't get it. The Rams went for it. They gave up all these draft picks. They spent all that money and they won. So it's okay when you win. It sucks when you lose and you don't get it done. They went for it. They swung for the fences. They didn't get it done. Okay. So now they're spending money. That's good. But they're still very meddlesome. They still feel like they're in control of everything despite hiring a GM. Tom Telesco was essentially a figurehead, right? In name only was he the GM of the Chargers, but he really didn't control what was going on there. All right. So that's still a situation to keep your eye on. I think if you're a prospective GM, you're a little leery of going to Los Angeles, a little leery because of the organizational setup, right? The Panthers, I put it at a 1.5. It easily could have been a 1, but David Tepper is so young in his NFL career as an owner. He should know better. He's been a part of the Steelers ownership group for a while, so he should know better. His impatience, his impulsiveness has been very dangerous to this point and destructive. And I know he wants to win, but he's going about it all the wrong way. And his lack of patience and impulsiveness has scared people away. It has made this job almost, without a doubt, the worst job this offseason. Despite everything not being as bad, it's a bad position to be in, because as a fan of a team that had the worst ownership group, the worst owner in pro sports, not just football, I know how that affects the hires that you get. There's a cap on what you're able to do when your ownership group and your organization isn't stable. And the Panthers are far from stable right now. I mean, we're throwing drinks on fans at this point. It's bad. It's real bad. Falcons. I put this ownership and organizational stability at a 5. Arthur Blank is one of the most patient owners in the NFL. The Falcons have been a model organization in terms of stability. Now, winning and success has eluded them here of late, since Matt Ryan's career kind of wound down. But this is a group that you can trust. If he hires you, you're going to be given every resource you need to be successful. He's going to back off. Yeah, he'll be on the sidelines at the end of the fourth quarter, right? But he's not going to tell you how to do your job. He's not going to be a helicopter owner, just like every other owner in the league. He's going to want to know what's going on. It's his team. He spent the money for it, right? But he's not going to prohibit you from doing your job. You're going to have all of the free range you need to get the job done. And if you don't, he's going to give you extra leeway to try and get it done. And if you can't, then he's going to move on. But it's not going to be a knee-jerk reaction, okay? The Raiders, organizational stability / owner is 3.5, 3.5. The biggest problem with the Raiders is that Mark Davis is broke. I actually don't think he's a bad owner. And he's one of these guys that he's not a football guy. So he's like, let me hire football people so I can just get the hell out of the way and handle the business side of things. So you want an owner like that because he's not going to tell you what to do. He's just going to hire you and he's going to move the hell out of the way. Now, the problem with that is he hired John Gruden, he moved the hell out of the way, and then Gruden ended up, turning the clock back to 2001 and had the Raiders playing football like we were still talking about 3 yards in a cloud of dust. However, by the time Gruden ended up being gone, they had turned themselves into a playoff team. Now, with Gruden having so much power, the organization and the pieces fit John Gruden's DNA. So when he left, they had to turn it over. Josh McDaniels came in. He turned the organization over to 2 ex-Patriot guys. It was a disaster. Luckily enough for him, he was smart enough to recognize that it was going to hell in the handbasket, got rid of those 2, and now he's starting anew. I hope he learned his lesson because they had Rich Bisaccia the last time. He was the right man for the job at that time. They moved on from Rich Bisaccia, and it was a disaster. Hopefully he learned from that. We'll see what happens. But I don't think he's a bad owner. I just think he's broke. Commanders, I put them at a 3.5. This would have been a 1. This might have been a -1 this time last year. But with new ownership coming in, the consensus around the league is that Washington is in good hands. Josh Harris has a track record in other sports of being a supportive owner, one that allows, he hires people, puts them in positions of power, and then allows them to do their job. And that's what we expect him to do here. And so I think there's a positive vibe around the league about what Washington can become under the ownership and leadership of Josh Harris, Magic Johnson, Mitchell Rales, and the like. So I think they're at 3.5. They still got more goodwill to build up, but they're off to a great start. And look, you can't get any worse than what it was before, right? So the Seahawks, they're a 5. They're a model of consistency. Even when their owner, Paul Allen, passed away about 2 years ago, nothing has changed there. You know what you're getting. You know what the Seahawks are all about. They just moved on from Pete Carroll after what was it, 16 years he had been in Seattle. So a model of consistency, one of those franchises that just does it the right way. And so they're a 5. You don't have any issues. Oh, now we're going to see how different things are run now that Pete Carroll isn't in full control. That was a coach-centric model where he was running the show. Now John Schneider is going to get his opportunity to actually run things. Want to see if there's going to be any difference there, but that's a really stable organization, as stable as it gets in the NFL. Same can be said for the New England Patriots. They're a 5 as well. Obviously, with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, the evil empire, they were stacking up wins like bricks, 6 Super Bowl titles over a 20-year span or so. Those guys were outstanding. And Robert Kraft one of the biggest owners in the NFL, one of the most influential owners in the NFL. They do it the right way in New England. They may cheat here and there. You know, they may try to get the upper hand, but all in all, the Patriots have been as stable an organization as it gets in the NFL. And so I'm actually interested to see what they do. The smart thing to do is going to be what I ultimately talk about here in a second. And that's what I think they're ultimately going to do, right? Because that's what smart organizations do. And they had the foresight to put themselves in this position, and I think they're going to go ahead and make sure that they take advantage of the opportunity that they've set up for themselves, right? And then lastly, the Titans, I think it's a 3.5. It's a solid organization. It's solidly run. I've had some issues with some of the moves and how they've been made here of late. Obviously, last year firing your GM, John Robinson, after a regular season game. Coincidentally enough, after a regular season game that involved A.J. Brown, who John Robinson traded away, and he murdered you in that game. Coincidentally, you fire your GM and you don't win another game the rest of the season. I thought that was a very ill-timed firing there. It didn't make any sense to me. You're that pissed off that you fire your GM immediately after a loss on the road. In a season that you're 7-3, 7-4, doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I didn't like the move then. I don't like it now. I'm not saying that wasn't the right move in terms of firing John Robinson, just not the right timing, if you ask me. Moving on from Vrabel, I don't have an issue with it per se, but this is not the most attractive job in the world. And I somebody's going to take it. Clearly, as I mentioned, there's only 32 of these, but I don't know. Every time someone gets fired in Tennessee, it's always kind of shrouded in mystery, and it's a little bit janky when it's done. And for that, they're 3.5, if you ask me. We'll see what Rand Carthen does. He's the GM that they hired last year from San Francisco. See what he does here moving forward. This will be his first head coaching hire. That's part of the reason I think they moved on from Vrabel, is because Rand Carthen wants to get his guy in there. We'll see what happens, And I think there's a guy that he has in mind. So let's now go through each of these with all that information, and we'll rank them as we go. So coming in at number 8, the worst job of this group. It's a no-brainer. It's the Carolina Panthers job right now, right? Who wants this job? I don't. I wouldn't. Look, this job was open last year. There was a vacancy there last year, okay? Guess what? Ben Johnson and all the prospective coaches are like, yeah, I kind of like it. Dan Quinn, all of them, yeah, I like it here. I'm going to stay in Dallas for Dan Quinn. I'm going to stay in Detroit. Like, if the jobs were that attractive, trust me, those guys would have left and went and at least interviewed for those jobs. They didn't. There was a reason why, okay? And now you fast forward a year later, and it's even worse now, okay? David Tepper as an owner looks even worse now than he did a season ago. And that job looks even worse a year later, because at least last year you had the number 1 overall pick, and there was an opportunity for that new coach to come in and decide who does he want at quarterback, et cetera, et cetera. But again, it didn't matter who that coach would have wanted, because Tepper is one of those meddlesome owners. He decided it was Bryce Young. He says that the organization made a decision. Frank Reich wanted C.J. Stroud. He put a gun to his head, and then he made him read a hostage letter in like week 8, right? And we all saw that poor man sitting there trying to phrase, what his dealings with the owner has been like. And I said, man, they got this man shooting a hostage video midway through his first season. That's bad. This isn't going to last very long. Now, I didn't think he'd be fired 3-4 weeks later, but this is not a great position to be in. They got some good cap space, $40 million. They're 13th in the league, but they don't have any draft capital because of the moves that they've made. They don't have any real talent on offense. They got a lot of work to do and not a lot of draft picks to do it with. You can't go out here and just spend and expect to upgrade your team. Remember, the draft is where you build your football team. Free agency is where you supplement your roster, okay? You build your roster through the draft. You supplement your roster through free agency. The Panthers have it in reverse right now because they don't have any draft capital, okay? So it's just not a good position to be in. And then Say what you want about Bryce Young. I haven't given up on the young man, but last year wasn't good. Okay. But that doesn't mean he can't play better and that there aren't qualities there that you can take and make him into a really good quarterback. I still think that can be done. But this is the 8th best job available. And notice I said best because I'm being positive. But 8th best when out of 8 means it's the worst job. Okay. But it's the 8th best job that you can take this offseason. You can get. In terms of the GMs, it's 4 GM jobs. This is the worst GM job you can take. And the biggest thing here is the organizational stability. I don't want an owner who's going to tell me how to do my job. I don't want an owner who's going to override me and my scouting department after I tell him this is what we're thinking about doing. And he's like, no, I think you should do this. I don't want to work for an owner that's doing that. I don't want to work for an owner who's impatient when things aren't going at his rate of speed. I don't want an owner that's going to think about potentially firing me because we haven't gotten the success that he thought we were going to have this season. So it's just a bad situation all the way around. Worst GM opening, worst head coach opening resides in Carolina currently. Coming in at number 7 for me personally is the Tennessee Titans job. They got a lot of cap space. And if I'm a head coach, that really doesn't matter to me. That's not going to change how I feel about the position. You got 8 draft picks. That's good. That helps. You got a quarterback. I'm not sure about him, but if I like Will Levis and I'm a potential head coaching candidate and I like Will Levis, that helps a lot. Here's why they're 7th on my list. The Titans are kind of stuck in mediocrity, right? They've got an older, aging roster. Okay, some of their best players are older players. Derrick Henry, starting to go towards the twilight of his career. DeAndre Hopkins, sort of going in that same direction towards the twilight of his career. They don't have a left tackle right now. That was an epic fail going out and getting Andre Dillard. So they Taylor Lewan obviously got retired, and then they went out and got Andre Dillard, and that didn't work. And, nothing wrong with kicking the tires of a former first-round pick, but it didn't work. So they need a left tackle, clearly. Offensively, there's not a lot there. There's just not. I love Okonkwo, the tight end out of Maryland, who had a really good rookie season for them. I think that's a guy you can build around. I like Tajay Spears. I thought he did some really good things. There are no receivers that you like on that roster right now other than DeAndre Hopkins. And they've got guys that can play football, but if you had a choice, hey, I need a receiver, you're not picking one from the Tennessee Titans unless it's DeAndre Hopkins, okay? Chris Moore is cool, and Nick Westbrook-Akine is nice. That's fine. That's great. None of these guys move the needle, though. And don't get me started on the kid from Arkansas. He's been a non-factor his first 2 years in the league. So it's a lot fundamentally wrong offensively. Defensively, there's some stuff there. Jeffrey Simmons, big Jeff Simmons is there. Shout out to my guy, MJ. Big Jeff Simmons is there. There's some stuff on defense. I like Harold Landry a lot when he's healthy. But there's a lot that's left to be desired defensively too. They've got some pieces. And I think if you get the right guy in there, he could whip that defense up and into shape and have them be formidable. I mean, that's what they were this year, essentially. But again, do you have enough? If I'm a prospective coach and I look around the landscape, I'm not checking for the Titans before I check for some of these other gigs. I've got the Titans right now rated as the 7th best job available this offseason. You go to number 6. And this one was tough for me because this was a toss-up. I could have gone either way here, but I put the Raiders job at 6. And here's why. Got great cap space, 9th overall, 55 million. That's a lot of cap space. They also have a GM job. We'll talk about that here in a second, but that to me matters more for the GM position than it does the head coaching position. They've got 9 total draft picks, including the 13th overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft. That helps a lot because, the next question and category I'm going to talk about, quarterback, which they don't have. You could maybe solve that with the 13th overall pick, right? Now, how does the draft shake out? Do you move up and try to get one of these quarterbacks? Do you stay at 13 and just see what happens? And do you like some of these secondary quarterbacks? Do you like them at 13? Are you going to wait to the second round? I mean, what are you going to do? Quinn Ewers went back to school, which is what we all anticipated him doing. Was he even a needle mover anyway? Don't know. But like I said, with him and J.J. McCarthy, they're going to add substance and depth to the draft overall at the quarterback position. If they go back to school, there's less to pick from. So a team like the Raiders, who's on the outside looking in of the big 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the draft, you then have to assess, what the secondary draft market looks like for these quarterbacks. One less name to pick from with Quinn Ewers going back to school. I still think it's an interesting job nonetheless. Ownership isn't bad. The roster is I think it's an actually talented roster. I think you can do some good things with the Raiders. It's just a quarterback situation that has me a little bit puzzled because to me, this is a Raiders roster that's set up to win right now. This isn't hey, come in here and I'm going to give you 3 or 4 years to turn it around. No, you got guys like Josh Jacobs, who, again, is going to be a free agent. But if they handle all of this correctly, he should be back, right? You got Devontae Adams, who showed you last year, hey, I want to win and I want to win now. And if you're not planning on doing that, let me out of here. Free me, right? And again, Max Crosby, all of these pieces that they have, Jacoby Myers, those guys are ready to win now. Okay. So it's a veteran roster. He's not a ton of young guys. I think you are in a tough spot because you're going to have to go get yourself either a veteran quarterback in free agency or you're going to have to draft a young quarterback. If the veteran comes in there and you trust him, you might have something. If you got to go the draft route, you could be in a little bit of trouble because, again, this roster, they're ready to win and you bring a young guy in there and he's not, up to speed with the rest of the roster. It could cause conflict with this Raiders job, which is why I have it at 6th currently. Now, if they make the right move with head coach, who knows? I have it as the second best GM job available this offseason. With all the cap space, with all the draft capital, with the ownership situation being what it is, it's a pretty decent GM job, I think, personally. So second for GM out of 4 openings, 6th for the Raiders overall for the head coaching vacancy. We go to number 5, and it's the Atlanta Falcons. To me, it's an interesting job. They have $37 million worth of cap space right now, which is good for 16th in the league. 7 draft picks, 8th overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft, and they've got 4 picks in the top 100. So they're sitting pretty to really upgrade this roster that I think is already very, very talented on both sides of the football. I think this is a roster you can win games with, which is why I think Arthur Smith was so pissed off, because had he just gotten competent quarterback play, not good, not great, competent quarterback play, they would have made the playoffs and won that NFC South division, because this is a good roster. So I think that is what is going to be very enticing. The problem here is, as I mentioned with the Raiders, even though you're at 8, which is not a bad spot to be, if you don't love Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix or one of these quarterbacks, I don't know if J.J. McCarthy's coming out. I don't necessarily think he's the answer anyway, but who knows? I don't know if you're going to be able to fill the most important position in this sport at 8. And that's what's holding you back currently. And if you can't fill it at 8, you're going to find yourself in the same predicament that you were in last year, So do you go the veteran quarterback route to hold you over until you find that young guy? That's a tough decision. I think you should be in the market for Justin Fields, because If the Bears decide to move on from him, he's the exact type of quarterback that would fit your offense with the weapons that you currently have. If the Bears decide to move on from Fields, you should be first in line. Okay? You should be first in line. If they don't move on from Fields, you're screwed. Pretty much. Unless they're willing to do business with you. They were willing to go back to 9 last year. Would they be willing to go back to 8 this year? I don't think they're willing to move that far back because they want Marvin Harrison Jr. if they're going to move back at all. They want Marvin Harrison Jr. if he comes out and declares. Hasn't done that yet. And his fellow receiver at Ohio State went back to school today. So I don't know. They could have all gotten together and said, hey, man, let's run this back and try to win a Big Ten championship. We haven't done that. So maybe he's going back to school. I told you these boys are already making money. These NIL deals are real. He's already making millions of dollars at school. He doesn't have to rush to the NFL, which is what I've been saying. That could change the way the Bears think about where they're willing to go in the draft. Who knows? We'll see. But right now, the Raiders' job, to me, is 5th on this list. Coming in at the Falcons, are 5th on this list. Coming in at number 4 on the list of jobs that are available in terms of head coaches are the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks are in cap hell. Hell is a bit of an overstatement. They only have $4 million worth of cap space, which is not where you want to be. It's not ideal, but again, they'll maneuver some things. They'll make the numbers work, and they'll free up tons of cap space when it's all said and done. That's what NFL teams do. You would just like to already be in a position of power so that when the start of the new league year happens, you could go off and do whatever it is you need to do. They're not in a position to do that. Okay. They've got 6 picks in the upcoming draft, including the 16th overall in the first round. They have a quarterback in Geno Smith, and they have a very stable organization, right? So all of these things to me point towards a coach that's looking for an operation where he can go and win right now. Like, this isn't a young team that's looking for someone to come in and change the culture, this, that, and the third. No, this is a team that they don't rebuild, they reload. They've never been bad with Pete Carroll, right? Since they got Russell Wilson. Even the years where he wasn't healthy, they still hovered around 500. The year we thought they were going to suck because either Geno Smith or Drew Lock was going to start, they made the playoffs, which was last season, right? This season, we said, oh shit, they made the playoffs. Geno Smith is, playing a lot better, got the contract. They wrote me, I ain't right back, all of that good stuff. Next thing you know, they're hovering around the playoffs again. So this is a veteran team, lots of talent, right? Got some stuff on defense, got a lot of stuff on offense. Love Kenneth Walker III, love DK Metcalf, love Jackson Smith and Jigba, love Tyler Lockett, love what they've done to the offensive line. That's a really good offense, ready to win right now. Right now. And if you can get the defense to match the intensity of the offense and get the offense to play consistent, you could have something in Seattle. So for me, it's the 4th best job, but just know that you don't have a young quarterback. It isn't a young team in particular. It's a veteran team for the most part, and they're trying to win now. That's a win now type of situation. All right. So Seattle comes in at number 4. So now you get to the top 3 openings. And number 3 for me is the New England Patriots opening at head coach. They've got the 3rd most cap space in the league at $75 million. So they're sitting pretty there. You got 7 total draft picks, the number 3 overall pick. So that helps you with the next category. Do you have a quarterback? No. But you got the number 3 pick in the draft. So if you like any of the top 3 quarterbacks, Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels, you'll get one of them. All you have to do is like one. If you like all 3, you're good. If you only like one, you could be screwed. If you only like 2, you could be screwed. But if you like all 3, you're fine. You're getting one, right? So you're in a great position there. Got cap space. There's a culture already ingrained in this organization, and I think I already know what they're going to do. But nonetheless, and you got a stable organization. I think it's a really solid job. I don't love their roster. I'm not going to lie to you. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. But you got draft picks, you got cap space. If you need to, maneuver, you can make some more moves happen. You got contracts coming off the books, things of that nature. There's some talent there in New England. Don't forget, that's a really good defense. All right. Christian Barmore is a monster. Okay. They turned him into a monster this year, and he's living up to that first round pick that they spent on him. Don't forget, Christian Gonzalez is coming back. All right. So Christian and Christian, those two dudes look like they could be the cornerstones of that defense. And they've got other pieces there that are really solid that, Belichick was able to get the most out of, including Jabril Peppers, who's been playing really good football for them. So I like that defense. I think they've got stuff there. I think they're off. And don't forget about Matthew Judon, who was pretty much hurt all season long. Damn good football player. Hell of a pass rusher. They got stuff in New England defensively. Offensively, But that's why you bring in this new coach who gives you a bit of direction as to what he's looking for to fill up his cupboard. Because I don't love the receiver position. I think you got some really talented tight ends. And if you keep those two there, Gesicki and Hunter Henry, you got something there, right? I like your running back position. I think you just need an infusion of speed. But I like Ramondre Stevenson. There was another back there. They had Zeke this year, and I think Zeke filled that role beautifully. I don't know if he'll be back next year, but if it's a reasonable price, I'd bring Zeke back and just get you a speed back, and I think you can win with that backfield, right? And now you just need a quarterback. And you probably could do a couple things on the offensive line, but that's not as bad of a job with all the cap space, with the draft capital, with the pieces that are already on the roster. If you have a vision for their offense, that's the key for me. You got a shot to turn that around very quickly, very quickly. I think it's the third best job available this offseason. Now you get to number two. And this one was tough for me because if the cap situation for the Chargers wasn't so bad, this would be the number one job because they got the quarterback. That's the most important thing in all of this. Whether you're a GM, you're a head coach, that's the most important thing is, do I have a quarterback? Well, the Chargers have a quarterback, and not just any quarterback, like a quarterback you can win a Super Bowl with. They have Justin Herbert. So that changes everything when you look at that opening and you go, holy shit, they got Justin Herbert. What is this job doing available? The bad part is I don't know what I'm surrounding him with on offense or defense because the cap is so bad, they're going to have to make some tough decisions. How much longer is Keenan Allen going to be there? Can I bring back Khalil Mack? Is Joey Bosa even worth keeping around at this point? He's always injured. Like, we don't know what they're going to look like next year because they're going to have some decisions to make, and they're going to have to get this cap situation figured out. But it's still Justin Herbert. It's still Keenan Allen if he's there, and I assume he'll be there. It's still Mike Williams. He'll be coming back from injury. A lot of people don't give Josh Palmer the credit that he deserves. He's a really good number 3 option. I don't really know if I care too much for the kid out of TCU, Johnston. I didn't like the pick when they made it. They could have gone in so many different directions. They went with him. I thought they were trying to go with the Mike Williams clone thing. It didn't work. That's not even who he is. I don't like to shit on young players, especially only after 1 year of tape and a limited body of work. I'm going to give him an opportunity just like I do with all young players. But it didn't look good in his rookie season. I'll be honest with you. It did not look good. But that said, they could do a little work to the offensive line. But defensively, you get the right coach in there. I'm telling you, they got the pieces defensively to win right now. They got the quarterback to win right now. If not for the cap situation and that kind of looming over the head of the next GM and the organization and not knowing, it's just the not knowing. If you could sell me a plan on, hey, here's how we're going to get under the cap and get back to a healthy situation, and it's not impacting the roster in such a detrimental way that I could still see a path to being successful, they'd be number one this offseason because they got Justin Herbert. And that changes everything. It really, truly does. But the cap space is a killer for me. It's a killer for me. And that's why they're the number 3 out of 4 GM jobs, okay? Because the cap situation, there's no way around that. You can't fake it. There's no way to try and minimize it. They're in cap hell, right? And the number 5 overall pick is a good place to be. With Justin Herbert as your quarterback, you can do something with that, even if it is trading back. Even if it's trading back, you can do something with that number 5 overall pick. Get a really good football player, potentially a blue chipper, or you can trade back, pick up more picks, and add to this roster that I think is already talented. So the Chargers job is number 2. Their GM ranking opening is number 3 for me. And then number 1, and you can call me biased if you want, but trust me, if I didn't think we were worthy of this, I would not have put us at 1. It's Washington. It's the Commanders. Okay. I don't have to explain to you why this is the best job overall in the league this season in terms of an opening for both GM and head coach, but I'm going to anyway. First of all, the cap space is ridiculous. First in the league, most cap space of any team, $86 million. So there's that. They have 9 total draft picks, the most of any of these teams on this list. They've got 5 in the top 100, the most of any team in this list. And they've got the number 2 overall pick, the highest of any team on this list. So while they don't have a quarterback, they're going to be in a position to get one this offseason in the draft. So you can kind of take that off the list. And even furthermore, it's almost better to come into a situation, unless you're getting Justin Herbert. That changes things. But unless you're getting a quarterback like Herbert, and that's rare, right? That you're going to have a situation open up with a quarterback like a Justin Herbert. Normally, you marry that quarterback with a coach that stays there for 12 years, the full duration of his career. So when you think about a guy like Drew Brees, he was with Sean Payton. You think about a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, he was with Mike Tomlin, right? Josh Allen hasn't had another coach other than Sean McDermott. Generally, when you get talents like that, openings don't happen because that quarterback is so good, you're going to continue to win, and that coach is going to continue to be there. Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, you get where I'm going with this, right? Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy, until we got to the bitter end of that situation, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, you don't see quarterbacks come available like Herbert. But normally, when you're going after a job, you're going to inherit a guy like Geno Smith. That's not terrible, but you can do a lot better. You're going to inherit a quarterback situation like the Raiders. Aiden O'Connell can't be your starting quarterback going into training camp. You're going to inherit a job like the Falcons where you go, I got to do something. I can't go into next season with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke as my 2 options. I've got to do something. That's usually what you're inheriting. Or you're coming into a situation with a quarterback like, say, Kirk Cousins. That's cool. But am I winning a Super Bowl with him? I don't know. Or Derek Carr or something like that. This is a situation where you get to pick. You get to handpick your quarterback at number 2 overall. And if the Bears are open for business, you could get as high as number 1. If that is something that you're interested in doing. You have the draft capital to do it. You've got the means to make it happen. You've got the cap space to go and turn this roster over and be competitive right away. You've got talent on this football team now. They need some work. I'm not going to sit here and act as if this is the best roster of this group of teams because it's not. But you've got some talented football players. Whether you're talking about Brian Robinson Jr. at the running back position, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson at the receiver position. You've got Sam Cosmi as one of the better right guards in all of football, right? So you've got a little bit of a nucleus there that you can build around. You're going to need some work on that offensive line, but it might not be as bad as we think. You know, depending on if some of the other pieces come to fruition. They got some young players that we just don't know what they are on the offensive line. We'll see what happens. You're going to need to do some work regardless on that offensive line. Tight end, you're going to need to get you a TE1. You don't have one currently on this roster. You're going to need to go get one of those, right? But if you get one of those, everything else could fall into place with Amani Rodgers coming back from injury next year and John Bates already looking like a legitimate TE3. So Offense isn't that far away. You get the right guy in there. There's enough talent that you can turn that thing around quickly. Defensively is where work needs to be done. And that's where those draft picks, that's where that cap space is all going to really come into play, because you need at least 3 defensive ends this offseason, right? You need an overhaul probably of the linebacker position, and you need at least 1, maybe 2 corners this offseason. And then you see what happens with the safety position and how things shake out with free agency. But I said all of that to say this: with the cap space available, with the draft capital available, with the number 2 overall pick in your back pocket, and a roster that isn't terrible, that's fully capable of turning it around rather quickly if the right buttons are pushed this offseason, to me, this, and an ownership group, let me not forget this, that has come in here, changed the way that people feel about this organization, and has already displayed a track record of hiring people and allowing them to do their jobs. It's a really good situation to be in if you're the Commanders. And just understand this, and I'm going to repeat this later on tonight when I'm live talking about these 2 potential candidates that Washington are interviewing for the GM job. Understand this: Adam Peters, one of the most sought after GM candidates in the league the last 3 years, turned down opportunities with the Titans and the Cardinals last year, was in the finals for the Giants job. Don't know if he had that offered to him or if he turned it down or not. I think he wasn't offered that job, but he was in the final stages there with the Giants 2 years ago, turned down the Titans job, turned down the Cardinals job. Both of those were offered to him, and went back to San Francisco to be the assistant GM there, right? Ian Cunningham, right? Same thing. Had opportunities to go elsewhere, was offered the Cardinals GM job last year, was offered the Titans GM job last year, turned both of them down to go back to Chicago. These are guys that can be selective. Why? They're among the hottest GM candidates in the league, and both want the Washington job. They are the last 2 finalists for the position. It tells you just how far Washington has come in 1 calendar year. This time last year, we couldn't have dreamt of having one of those 2 guys wanting our job. Our cap situation isn't what it was now. The draft situation isn't what it is now. And our ownership and organizational stability wasn't what it is now. Fast forward a year, and now 2 of the best, brightest, and young GM candidates in the league are vying for the Washington GM job. It's the best GM job opening, and I think it's the best head coaching opening as well, because of all of the things that I've mentioned, all of the assets that are at the disposal of the next head coach. If, for instance, if you're Bobby Slowick or Ben Johnson, and you have a preference at the quarterback position in this year's draft class, you can go get that guy. Sans for maybe Caleb Williams if the Bears decide that's who they want at number 1. They say you really like Drake May. Well, you can get that guy. You can mold him. You can have him grow in your offense. You don't have to inherit Baker Mayfield. You don't have to inherit Derek Carr. You don't have to inherit, a bad quarterback situation with no way out. You don't have to inherit somebody with bad habits already. You can come in, get your guy, and mold him in your offense. Isn't that something that you would want to do? I think that's why this is a really good job. So now I'm going to take the liberty to take it a step further, and I'm going to give you who I think. This is not who I think is going to end up there. I'm telling you who I think is the best fit for these jobs. Okay. So we're going to go in the order of worst to first. All right. So we're going to start with the Panthers job. To me, the best hire for the Carolina Panthers job. And again, keep in mind, understand what I'm saying. I'm not telling you this is who I think the franchise is going to hire. This is who I think is the best hire for the job. Okay. For the Panthers, to me, it's Bobby Slowick. Why? Because 1, he took the number 2 overall pick from the same draft class as the quarterback that you have who you drafted number 1 overall, and he made him a star in his offense. All right, that's number 1. So you're hoping he can do the same thing for the number 1 overall pick from that same draft class. That's number 1. Number 2, however, is Bobby Slowick comes from the Shanahan tree. And if you know anything about the Shanahans, they're going to run the hell out of the football. That's going to set up play action fake. It's going to give you some wide open windows to throw into if you do it correctly. What do the Panthers need most offensively? They need to instill confidence in Bryce Young. They need to run the football. They went out and spent money on Miles Sanders last year. They have Chuba Hubbard, who had a really good season this year. They've spent draft capital on the offensive line. They need to spend some more, but you can really take the pressure off of Bryce Young, get him comfortable by running the football and then going play action fake and allowing him to throw into some open windows, something he didn't see a lot of this season because his receivers weren't capable consistently of getting open and creating massive separation. All right. So I think Bobby Slowick's type of offense, his style of offense is exactly what the Panthers need for their young quarterback, because everything that the Panthers are doing this year is all in the name of fixing Bryce Young, getting him to play at the level that warrants the number 1 overall pick and all that they gave up to get there to get him, right? That's what this offseason is about. The next head coach is going to be offensive minded. They're going to want a guy that's going to come in there and going to be able to get the most out of Bryce Young. That's what this offseason is about. Bobby Slowick, I think, can do that. I think he's the best fit for the Panthers. Number 7, the Tennessee Titans. Same thing. Bobby Slowick is the best answer in Tennessee. Why? Because of the same things I just mentioned. You got a young quarterback in Will Levis. You got, and the Titans are made to run the football. This is what they do, right? This is why they've been competitive the last 4 or 5 years, because they can run the hell out of the football, much like Cleveland and Baltimore and San Francisco and some of the best rush teams over the last 5 years. They're right in that mix with Derrick Henry, right? Now Henry's up there in age, probably not going to be back in Tennessee this year, but you still have a young back that played really well this year. And so you take that guy, maybe you add another back to the mix via the draft this year. You keep running the football, and then what do? You go play action fake. I talked about the lack of targets at receiver. Well, guess what? You don't have to. Look, Bobby Slowick made Noah Brown look like a number 2 receiver this year. Noah Brown had some monster games. Noah Brown. Yeah, that Noah Brown that was a blocking receiver at Ohio State and with the Dallas Cowboys. That Noah Brown. If he can do it for Noah Brown, he can do it for, Treylon Burks, okay? Maybe he can bring him back to life in year 3 of his career, all right? If he can do it for Noah Brown, I'm pretty sure he can do it for, Treylon Burks or Nick Westbrook-Akine, right? And if DeAndre Hopkins is there, Lord, he can really do some numbers, some work with him, right? So I think Slowick is the best, man for the job in Tennessee as well, right? We'll see what they decide to do. The Raiders' job is next. To me, they've already got the right man for the job. It's Antonio Pierce. If it's not broken, do not fix it. He's got the locker room. First of all, he's the only man that can control Jack Jones, okay? Had him in high school. Jack Jones is a hothead. He was a hothead in college. He's a hothead in high school. The Patriots moved on from him. Why? Because he's a hothead. He's shown he's a hothead in the NFL. How many times has Antonio Pierce had to walk on the field to get this man to calm down? But he's a damn good football player. And as I've said, it's cool to have Boy Scouts, but you just need some dudes rough around the edges. You need some dudes that sometimes you got to remind them, hey, this is a game, bro. This ain't real life. Like, we ain't trying to hurt nobody out here, right? We ain't trying to get into a fight. They got a couple of those on the roster, including Jack Jones, super talented. Antonio Pierce is the only guy that can get through to this man. You want him on the roster, you need Antonio Pierce. But that's not the only reason you keep him. He got guys that were checked out mentally, like Devontae Adams, to check back in. He got guys that were already checked out, like Josh Jacobs, to check back in, who want to come back. Guys like Max Crosby believe in the message that he's preaching. He turned that Raiders team from a desolate black hole to the black hole. They're back. and they can win games. They went to Kansas City and beat the Chiefs, something they hadn't done in like 5-6 years. Antonio Pierce is the right man for the job. All right? Get him a quarterback, bring back Josh Jacobs, and they got a shot. So I hope they learned their lesson from last time. I'm hearing all this Jim Harbaugh talk, and that's cool, right? It's cool to go after the big fish, the big name. It's right here, bro. You had Rich Bisaccia and you effed that up. Don't F it up this time. Your guy's already in the building. Now, what you do at GM, don't know. And maybe it's a package deal. You had the brother in the GM, interim GM role. Maybe he stays there. But to me, Antonio Pierce is the man for the job there. For the Falcons, I think their two best options are either Ben Johnson if you're going offensive-minded, or it's Mike McDonald if you're going defense. So Ben Johnson, and I've heard Bill Belichick's name referenced in terms of the Falcons. I don't think that's a great fit. And I know he's not coming to Washington. And those were the two names that were mentioned when he first was cut loose. And I don't think it's a good fit for him in Atlanta because of what? They don't have a quarterback. And what did we just see him struggle with in New England at the end of his tenure? Not having a quarterback. You can't put Bill Belichick in a position where he doesn't have a quarterback. He's proven already that's not what he's good at. He can take that defense in Atlanta and whip it into shape and all that good stuff, but he needs to be somewhere where it's already established and all he's got to do is come in there and make shit happen. Okay. To me, Ben Johnson is the perfect antidote for what the ailment is in Atlanta offensively. Like, I didn't think Arthur Smith's offense was terrible, but obviously the quarterback position was a problem. But when you look at the offensive weapons that they have, they got an elite or borderline elite player, young elite player at every level offensively, except for the most important position, which is why they're on this list to begin with. But you got Bijan Robinson. You got Kyle Pitts, who was pretty much a non-factor offensively coming off the injury this year and then just wasn't a factor in the offense for whatever reason. And then you've got Drake London. You got some stuff, man. And I just think about what Ben Johnson was able to do with a dynamic back in Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit, a dynamic tight end in Sam Laporta, and a really good receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I'm thinking about, if he can do that with Amon-Ra St. Brown, what can he do with Drake London? If he can do that with Sam Laporta, what can he do with Kyle Pitts? If he can do that with Jahmyr Gibbs, what can he do with Bijan Robinson? Are you kidding me? Just got to get this man a quarterback. You're at 8. If an opportunity presents itself, you go and get one of these dudes. Worst case scenario, you don't got to love him. Take Michael Penix Jr. You could do a hell of a lot worse, right? I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Hell, if you like Bo Nix, go that direction. I wouldn't. But all I'm saying is, with that kind of talent, we've seen him do magnificent things with that type of talent already. He can do it again. He can replicate it. And if you're Mike McDonald, young, defensive-minded, tough, I think those things were traits that the Falcons already exhibited defensively this year. It just, for whatever reason, they didn't get it done a lot of times because their offense was turning the ball over, doing stupid stuff. But you bring in a guy like Mike McDonald, and I think there's some work that needs to be done on that front, right? But you still got, remember, Grady Jarrett missed most of this season with an injury. You got Grady Jarrett coming back. You need a legitimate defensive end. So you still feel like you've been looking for one of those since the days of John Abraham. It feels like you've been looking for one of those, But if you can get one of those, your linebacker position always seems to be playing really well. The corners, I think, are really solid, right? And I think you got something, Jesse Bates III is a monster at safety. I like the stuff. And I know that I might be in the minority, but I like Clark Phillips III. I thought he played well. He's just undersized. And if he could find the football a little bit more consistently, he was in great position a lot of the year. Just, again, he's an undersized guy, but I like him a lot. I think there's some stuff there that you can maneuver defensively. And I've already told you the talent is there on offense. They spent tons of draft capital on the offense. The offensive line is set. ready to go. Just drop the damn quarterback in there. That's what they need. So I see those two guys being, solid fits there. Seahawks, to me, the number one fit of all these teams, I think the best fit is Mike Vrabel going to Seattle. Here's why. The Seattle Seahawks are the Tennessee Titans. Literally. And Mike Vrabel is a player's coach. He likes veteran players. This is what he does. He takes a veteran team. He maximizes their potential, wins games he has no business winning, takes them to the AFC Championship game with Ryan freaking Tannehill at quarterback, a dominant run game, and a suffocating defense. He could do that in Seattle. Like literally, I just described to you the Tennessee Titans circa 2019. Now, they're going to need some work on the defensive side, but boy, Witherspoon looks damn good. You got Jamal Adams' crazy ass. You went out and got the defensive tackle from the Giants, right? You got some stuff off the edge, like Boye Mafe, look out, right? Daryl Taylor, solid. Like you got some stuff. They got the kid from the Chargers a couple of years ago, solid. Like they got stuff. You really like what they got in the linebacker position. Bobby can still play. They got the kid from Cincinnati, I think it was, at linebacker in the middle. They got stuff on defense. They got stuff. Offensively, it's a veteran group. Geno Smith is his Ryan Tannehill. Kenneth Walker III is his Derrick Henry. DK Metcalf is his A.J. Brown. Here's the difference. They actually got other receivers. It doesn't have to just be the A.J. Brown show. You send Mike Vrabel to Seattle and they're beating the Seahawks, they're beating the Rams next year twice, potentially, and they're going to beat the 49ers once. I assure you of that. He's going to win some games, got no business winning. You're going to look up, and damn, Mike Vrabel got the damn Seattle Seahawks at 11-6. And you're like, I really don't want to go to Seattle. It's back to being the 12th man again. I really don't want to go to Seattle because he's going to outcoach you. You already know that. He's going to outcoach you, and they got talent. I'd send Mike Vrabel to Seattle so damn fast. Make your damn head spin. And he would kill it in Seattle. Kill it. The other guy is Dan Quinn. And the reason that this makes sense is because of his ties to Seattle and the energy. I just talked about that defense, and they're very fast defensively, are the Seahawks. He loves a undersized, fast defense. That's what they are. They're fast. And you bring in Dan Quinn, and he can whip that defense into shape. And he can get them to be a fast-flowing, aggressive, attacking style defense like Dallas is, that's creating turnovers because they got ball hawks on that side of the ball already. And he could get those boys to be dangerous, real dangerous. And then you look at the defense or the offense, he can run the ball with Kenneth Walker III. He knows what he's getting out of Geno Smith. And you got DK. He saw this up close and personal. They shredded his Dallas Cowboys defense on a Thursday night. He knows what they're capable of on offense. He watched it. And he's been to Seattle. He knows the environment. He knows what that can be if the team is good. It makes a lot of sense. I still don't know if I'm Dan Quinn, if I'm leaving Dallas to go there, but it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. So you get to number 3, and it's the Patriots. And to me, this is a no-brainer. It's Gerard Mayo, right? He's already in the building. You gave him a pay raise last year to stop him from leaving and taking interviews last year because you saw this coming. You had the foresight to see that the end of the Belichick era was coming to an end, and you needed to be in a position to promote from within. He knows this roster already. He knows the strengths and the weaknesses. He knows how to maximize the guys that are there. He's young. He's energetic. Those players react and respond to him. They saw him as a star 4 years ago, which is why they've been they've been putting him in this position. It was almost like an internship, and he's been prepping for this moment. They've been preparing him to take over as the head coach of the New England Patriots. All right. And he said, as soon as the season was over, I'm ready to be a head coach. He put the pressure on the Patriots. There was a quote from January, like 3rd or 4th, where he said, hey, I'm ready to be a head coach in the NFL. That he didn't say that out of nowhere. That didn't come out of thin air. That was a message that he used the media to convey to the Patriots. I'm not taking your little pay raise. I'm not taking your little pseudo position rank change or upgrade. I'm going to get me a job this year, bro. Either y'all give me the job or I'm going to find one. But I'm not going to just stay here waiting. They said, we hear you loud and clear. They moved on from Bill, and I think Gerard Mayo is going to be the next head coach of the New England Patriots. However, Mike Vrabel would also make a lot of sense there. And for all the reasons I already named, the only difference is he doesn't have that veteran quarterback here. I like him in a situation where he's already got a veteran quarterback. So this would be a little bit tough for him because he's going to have to find that quarterback, right? But there's a lot of pieces workable there, like I mentioned already with their defense. He could really get that defense to play well. And offensively, this is the type of shit he had in New England or Tennessee, excuse me, where it's really not no stars other than A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry, and you just got to figure the rest of the shit out. That's what he would have to do in New England offensively. But he'd be able to do it because that's what he does. But to me, it's Gerard Mayo's job. I just don't see anybody else getting that job. So now we get to the Chargers. I got two names for the Chargers. Now, I know Jim Harbaugh's name is, surfacing for the Chargers. And Harbaugh's going to end up somewhere in the NFL. And I think it's going to be with the Chargers. I think that's going to be their guy. I've been adamant about that. However, I don't think he's the best fit for them. I don't. His style of coaching, how he wants to run his offense. Look, you're not wasting Justin Herbert, but I feel like you're wasting Justin Herbert if Jim Harbaugh's your coach, right? Because he wants to run the football. Who are we kidding? And that's cool. You got Justin Herbert. Like, I'm not saying don't run the ball because you got Justin Herbert, which is what the last two coordinators decided to do. But I'm saying don't go to the other end of the spectrum, which is what you're going to do if you get Jim Harbaugh. Or at least that's what I think. But I could be wrong. We'll see. But to me, there are two guys in particular that stick out like a sore thumb for the Chargers. The first one is Bill Belichick. Because what do we know about Bill Belichick? You give him a talent like Justin Herbert, and he can win football games. We saw him do it with Tom Brady. All right, we know that. And I've been saying this for years, at least the last 2 years, maybe 3. Watching the Chargers struggle defensively with Brandon Staley for some inexplicable reason. And I don't know what the hell Staley had going on. But they've got all the pieces to be a dominant defense. They're fast. They're talented. They're aggressive. You give Bill Belichick Thule. You give Bill Belichick Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. You give him, he's older now. I don't know how good he is anymore, but Kendricks. Shit, I even say you give him Kenneth Walker or Kenneth Murray. He probably get more out of Kenneth Murray than any of these dudes have. You go to that say, do you know what he would do with Derwin James? Bill Belichick would have to clean himself up in the bathroom if you gave him Derwin James. You see what he's doing with Jabril Peppers? You give him Derwin James, he's going to go have to wipe himself off. Are you kidding me? What he would do with that defense? With Asante Samuel's son? You know what he did with his dad? You give Belichick, hell, I think he'd take Michael Davis and make him a really good corner. You give Bill Belichick this defense, he would do work. And we already know what he would do with Justin Herbert as the quarterback. All he's going to do is probably bring Josh McDaniels with him. And he ain't going to do nothing but get Justin Herbert to play the best football of his life. They'd win immediately next year with Bill Belichick. They'd be in the AFC Championship game or the divisional round at a bare minimum if they're healthy with Bill Belichick as their coach. The other guy is Dan Quinn. Now, for all the reasons I've already mentioned, you give Dan Quinn that defense, right? And he'd add a couple pieces here and there, but they're so fast on. You give him Kenneth Murray, you know what he would do with Kenneth Murray? Kenneth Murray would be lining up everywhere. He'd be all over the damn place, right? And you give him Derwin James, he'd have Derwin James all over the damn place. I just think about what he's doing with Donovan Wilson and how good Donovan Wilson is. You know what he would do with Derwin James? Like, there's a lot of stuff being wasted in LA with the Chargers right now, defensively in particular. A lot of shit being wasted. A lot of years, a lot of talented football players, a lot of money being wasted right now because of poor coaching. You get a coach in there that knows what he wants to do and how he wants to do it. I'm telling you right now, the Chargers could be one of the best teams in the AFC. You get the right guy in there. I don't know if that's Jim Harbaugh or not, but that's the direction they're probably looking at. But we'll see. And then finally for Washington, y'all know what it is. It's Ben Johnson, man. Ben Johnson, to me, is the perfect coach for Washington because of all the things that I've already mentioned about Ben Johnson with the Falcons. Now, he doesn't have a tight end here, but he can get himself one this year with the draft. There'll be plenty of options, I'm hoping, available, right? This is a talented tight end group that's more likely than not going to be available this year in the draft. So I'm not really too concerned about Washington finding themselves a tight end in the second or the third round. We got 2 second-round picks very early, and you have a couple of third-rounders, excuse me. And so I think with one of those 4 picks, you can get yourself a quality starting NFL tight end that will really work in his scheme. We know the receivers are there. He could do some work with Terry McLaurin because I think Terry McLaurin is a faster version of Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I think Terry would absolutely eat in his system. Jahan Dotson wouldn't look like some secondary scrub in his offense because they'd actually use him. And Ben Johnson would actually utilize him and get the football to him. Right? And then I think Brian Robinson Jr. would be allowed to be Brian Robinson Jr. They would actually give him the football, give him opportunities to do the things that he's done very effectively in his first 2 years, just hasn't had enough opportunities. I think you add a speed back, and I see Washington doing that anyway. And you got everything that, and of course, you got to fix the offensive line. That's something he's been afforded that is better in Atlanta right now than it is in Washington. But you fix the offensive line, which is something he was afforded in Detroit, and you got the makings of a big-time offense. And then, as I mentioned, he's going to have to come in here, hire himself a good defensive coordinator. I'm assuming he'll bring somebody from Detroit with him if he doesn't have a name in mind around the league elsewhere. And you just try to whip this defense into shape. But offensively, to me, Washington hasn't averaged over 20 points in a season in 4 years, 5 years. Okay. We haven't averaged over 20 points offensively since 2018. Didn't in 19, didn't in 20, didn't in 21, I lied. I think we did in 2021. We didn't in 22 or 23. We didn't in 20 or 19. So 4 out of the last 5 years, we haven't averaged over 20 points a game. Who you beating doing that shit? Like, I know the defense was historically bad for Washington this year. It was historically bad. I'm aware. And a lot of work. And that's why they're talking to a lot of defensive guys right now. But to win in this league, you need offense. You need to score points. How many good teams with elite defenses have we seen win 6-7 games? Because you can't win like that in the NFL anymore. You got to score points, man. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired of having to try to make 17, 20, or 23 points work. I'm sick of that. I'm over that. I'm trying to score 27. I'm trying to score 30. I think we can do that if you get a guy like Ben Johnson. I think he's a perfect fit for Washington, but till that happens, we'll see. But they seem to be smitten by a lot of defensive dudes, so we'll see what they decide to do. But I think he's the best fit for the Washington Commanders. So let's get to the comment section and see what you guys have to say. Junior Nando, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Junior writes, if Washington was smart, they would try to get a GM out of Green Bay. Teach your team what a draft and develop franchise and patience looks like. Hey, Junior, don't get too carried away now. You made it to the playoffs, and that's cute. Let's see what you do against Dallas. But let's not get carried away. I would not have done what you guys did. That whole blind leading the blind shit you did at receiver, still not drafting a first-round receiver, that shit is trash. I'm good. I don't want to adopt the Green Bay mentality of drafting. I'd like to do shit my own way. So I'm good on that. I appreciate the offer, but we're going to go in a different direction. With teams that draft in a manner, and y'all don't even do shit in free agency. Y'all do nothing in free agency. I'm good because I at least want to be active in free agency. I don't want to just do everything via the draft. So I'm going to pass on Green Bay. Thanks, but no thanks. Tizzy Bang, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, yo, Louie, are those fitteds more low profile type than tall? I want one, but I got peanut, so I like the low profile. Yeah, I mean, so it's not a fitted. It's a snapback. So you can adjust it and make it tight, but it is a little tall on your head. But I got a small head too. I don't have a big head. I got a small little head, is just like you probably do. Now, I don't know if you got hair on your head. That helps me a little bit, but I got a small head too. So I think the hats fit just fine. And like I said, you can adjust it because it's not a fitted, it's a snapback. So I think they are a little tall though, if you're asking me, but they might still fit you good. Only one way to find out, right? Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section. Y'all know how this works. If you have a comment that you want read on the air, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read. If it is pertinent, we will get to it. Time permitting, we probably got another 20 to 30 minutes before I got to get out of here. So if you want to ensure that your comment is read, super chats are the way to get that done. Anyway, let's get to the comment section. We'll get to a few of these comments, and then we'll get out of here. So see what you guys are talking about, guys and gals out there. All right. Let's see. Whew, a lot of comments. Y'all ain't going off. Probably, and a lot of the comments probably got erased at this point. I'm feeling like, no, okay, it's still going all the way up, all the way up, all the way up. Here we go. Let's go. I saw your comment, Larry. It's just not pertinent. Like, it's not happening. So we just gonna keep it pushing. Got a super chat, so I'm gonna go ahead and knock that one out. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, agree with everything you said except one thing. Todd Monken as Washington's head coach. I banged the table last year for him to be the OC here, and look what he has done in Baltimore. I don't know. He might have done wonders for Sam, and he would have been a much better hire than Eric Bieniemy. But that's hindsight. Now, you said you were saying that last year. Good for you if you had the perspective to be able to think that he could do it last year. I know he was coming from Georgia and the success they had there and all that stuff. I think he's been aided by Lamar Jackson being Lamar Jackson. That helps. And they got a ton of talent. They surrounded Lamar with the best supporting cast he's had in his entire career. So there's a lot to be said about what he's been afforded in Baltimore, and then having that quarterback doesn't hurt. Would he have been able to do the same thing here? I don't know. Hard to say. But has he even been mentioned for an interview anywhere? A lot of people forget Todd Monken was in the league before with Tampa Bay. So I don't know if his name resonates or is his name buzzing right now. I don't recall seeing him be a name that people are talking about being interviewed for, jobs right now. But I could be wrong, and he could have already had 2 or 3 requests put in for him. I just don't recall seeing it. So we'll see what happens with him as time progresses. Let's see. John Wynn says Patriots might be in danger for next year after parting ways with Bill Belichick. You know what? It might be for the best. Who knows? Like, they were stale and they were stuck. And at some point, you got to make a change. And it's never good to make a change for the sake of making change. But it's also sometimes it's time for a change. And he had been there over 20 years. And clearly, without Tom Brady, he was not the same coach. And he's 72 years old, you know, or 71, excuse me. It was time to move on. It was time to move on. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what they're able to get done. They're going to hire Gerard Mayo, I think, and I think it's going to be a fantastic hire. And I think that's going to be how they move forward. And we'll see what happens from there. I think he's got the pulse of that team, probably even better than Belichick did. Similar to Antonio Pierce, you know, you get a young coach in there that's vibrant, that can relate to the players. That changes the atmosphere. It changes everything. That's probably why they wouldn't let him leave. Junior Nando. Thank you for the super chat. I didn't hit the Nando nest. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Commander's way is the loser way. The Packers aren't good by accident. But hey, you want to learn the hard way? Fine. Let me be on cloud 9 right now. LOL. Look, I'm happy for you. And I love Jordan Love. And so I hope you beat the Cowboys this weekend. I have no beef with you or your organization or how they do things. I just don't want to do things like the Green Bay Packers. All right. I like some of the young talent. I don't love all of those guys. I would not have drafted the Iowa defensive end. He may turn out to be a stud for you. I wouldn't have drafted Rashawn Gary. You did, and he turned out to be really good. So we'll see how all of these things work out. But at the end of the day, you have a philosophical approach on how you do things in Green Bay, and you've been doing it like that for decades, going all the way back to Ron Wolf and company. I don't want to do it that way. We've been trashed. You're not wrong, but it's because of ownership we've been trashed. Now we've got a new direction. It's a new day, and I'm looking forward to seeing things done the right way in Washington, whatever that is. All right, whatever that is. So I'm looking forward to it. Free Shabazz. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Yo, Lou, after being a head coach, who do you want at OCDC? So the offensive coordinator won't really matter as much, assuming that Ben Johnson is one of those coaches that wants to call his own plays, which I would assume most offensive coordinators who become head coaches enjoy calling plays. That's their favorite thing to do. And so unless they're not doing it effectively or it's affecting the way that they're able to do the rest of their duties, they're going to continue to do that. So offensive coordinator, not going to matter as much. It's the defensive coordinator that's going to be huge. The likelihood is you would love to wrestle somebody's defensive coordinator away from them, but they have veto power. If you're not going to give them some sort of title that upgrades their standing, like assistant head coach, you can't take somebody else's defensive coordinator. Like, I would love to go get Evero, right? Evero or Giro, or Giro Evero, excuse me, and make him our defensive coordinator. But the Panthers are like, hey, bad back, he's ours. Watch out. Hey, back up off our defensive coordinator, right? But you know I've seen a lot of Wink Martindales. I'm not a Wink Martindale fan. I like aggressive defensive coordinators, but he's too aggressive. Like, it's funny because everybody want to blitz until you get cooked blitzing, and now you like, hey, stop blitzing. That's who he is. That's in his DNA. That's what got him fired in Baltimore. That was part of the problem in New York, is they were too aggressive, and that's why he got into it with Brian Daboll, and that's who he is. You can't change. Look, you can't change that tiger stripe. How old is Wink Martindale? He's up there. He don't give a shit. He's at that point of his career. He's at that age where, bro, this is who I am. Either you love me the way I am, or you leave me. But I ain't changing. It'll be interesting to see what they do from a defensive coordinator standpoint, because I do think there's some guy, like, for instance, if Antonio Pierce isn't retained in Vegas, right? And if he's not back in Vegas as a head coach, he's not coming back to be their inside linebackers coach, which is what he was prior to him being catapulted into and thrusted into the interim head coach position. I'd go after a guy like Antonio Pierce, bring him back home, right? Homegrown product. Clearly, the players love him, and he'll bring some fire to the group. I'd love to add him to the mix. So it'll be somebody like that, you know. But we'll see. More likely than not, I've already said this. If you hire Ben Johnson or you hire somebody that's an offensive guy, he's going to reach back probably where he came from and grab a positional coach, a linebackers coach, a DB coach, and make him, if he thinks that guy's ready, make him the defensive coordinator. If you're Detroit, they probably got a couple of positional coaches there, a linebackers coach, a defensive line coach, a secondary coach that they like, and that he might bring with him and make him the defensive coordinator, right? We'll see. We'll see what happens. But like I said, I'm a little nervous because it's a lot of defensive dudes they got lined up. A lot of defensive-minded coaches lined up. Junior Nando, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Junior writes, you didn't like Jaden Reed either. I didn't. I'm not going to lie. It's not that I didn't like Jaden Reed. I didn't like when you took him. I thought it was too early for him. That's what I didn't like. I didn't have a problem with him coming out of Michigan State. I just didn't think he warranted a second-round pick. That was my problem. He said, but all love, been watching you since we drafted Jair. Just happy we made it to the playoffs. Who is GM Green Bay going to target in the draft? I don't know. It's hard to say right now. Obviously, we are a long ways away from that. But I'll tell you this much. The Packers have done a really good job of identifying players that fit what they're trying to do. And that's the mark of a good organization. They can identify what a Packer looks like. Even when I can't see it, somebody on the outside can't see it. Like, I didn't love the Rashawn Gary pick. You know that if you've been watching me long enough. Turned out to be perfect for them. Just like I just told you, I didn't like the kid from Iowa that y'all drafted last year. But he might turn out to be exactly what you need him to be, right? He's definitely athletic and talented. Can you whip it into shape and get him to play the way you need him to play? But we'll see. We'll see. Bronco Kid, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, no, Louie, I don't want to deal with Bill and Andy Reid 4 times a year. I'm telling you, if Bill Belichick went to the Chargers, I could see them being in the AFC Championship game next year. That I know Chargers fans probably don't want to hear that shit. Just like Washington fans don't want to hear that shit. But it's different. We don't have the pieces that the Chargers do defensively. And we don't have Justin Herbert at quarterback like they do. He'd have to build it up from the ground, and he's already proven he's incapable of doing that. And you can say, well, it ain't his job to build it up from the ground. It's his job to coach the players. Fair enough. We got it. We'll have a GM doing that, but I still don't trust that he'll get the most out of, the quarterback position with that guy not being a stud already. And I'm not sure what he's going to do with this defense. I'm just not sure what he'll be able to do because we're lacking a lot of stuff defensively, Meanwhile, the Chargers, Belichick with that defense and Justin Herbert. There've been so many games that Justin Herbert has lost, and the offensively they've scored 30 or 33 or 34 points. Make it make sense. You know how many games they lost with Herbert scoring in that offense scoring 30 or 33 points? You give him Belichick, he ain't got to worry about that shit no more. King of the Bluegrass. I know you don't want to see him twice a year, along with Andy Reid twice. I know it would be a nightmare. I don't blame you. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the Bluegrass. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, who writes, you probably don't remember, but I used to check in here as Michael White. I suggested Monken last January, and you said the two that you didn't like hiring college coaches, and it was a lateral move. I I don't necessarily like hiring college coaches to come in blindly, but he had been in the NFL before. He was a little different. Like, so, and a lot, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was a prisoner of the moment then too. And I don't regret telling you that I didn't want Todd Monken, because I don't know what he would have done here personally. But he's obviously done really well in Baltimore. And again, we don't have Lamar Jackson. We don't have all the talent that they have. We don't have their offensive line. So he was afforded a lot of things that just simply weren't here in Washington. That doesn't mean he wouldn't have been successful. But last year you asked me that, and I was fresh off of the Joe Brady debacle in Carolina and thinking he was going to be the next big thing. And he was awful in Carolina. And so fresh off of that in my mind, I'm like, I don't know if I want to mess around with anybody from the collegiate ranks right now. That's kind of where my head was at. So you probably caught me at the wrong time, but I wasn't all in on Monken like you were. So you saw something there, and I knew what he had done at Georgia, and they run a pro style offense, and I thought it could have worked in the NFL, because again, that's where he came from. He's an NFL guy, right? He took the NFL program and went to college and was very successful with it and came back because he's an NFL dude at heart, at his core. So it wouldn't shock me if he gets an opportunity and he kills it, but it doesn't hurt that he has Lamar Jackson and all the weapons that have been afforded to him in Baltimore either. Let's see. Where did I leave off at? Right here. All right. My guy. Craig, what up? Top flight? Right. Stay away from Harbaugh, Lou. Hey, we don't want him. I can tell you this much. We're going to be tied to everybody, because we've requested interviews with just about everybody. So we're gonna be tied to everybody. Now, if we are really interested, it gets interesting, because this was an angle that I didn't entertain, but apparently the Harbaughs are a very tight-knit and close family. And obviously his brother John is in Baltimore. Their parents live this way. And if he gets a job with Washington, now all of a sudden he's close to his parents and his brother. I didn't entertain that part of it because I don't usually think about those types of things. I'm thinking about all football stuff and how it's a good fit because of the roster, or the staff, or this or that. I'm not thinking about personal stuff that people take in, because these are human beings we're talking about, and they take that stuff into consideration. That could be a driving force for where he wants to go. Kind of feels like Jim Harbaugh is in a position coming off of a natty where he can call a shot. Like, if he wants to go somewhere and that team's interested, he's the top candidate. That's what it kind of feels like. Not saying that that's true in every instance, but if he picks the Chargers or he picks the Raiders, they're like, yeah, we want you. So we'll see what happens. I don't want him. You don't have to worry about me trying to snatch him up. Anyway, I digress. Always good to hear from you. Let's see. John Wynn writes, I knew Pete Carroll was going to be fired from the Seahawks. I felt like you were trying to have a debate with me earlier, not seeing Pete go anywhere. I didn't think they were going to fire him. You said it. You asked me. You didn't tell me he was going to be fired. You asked me, could Pete Carroll get fired? I was like, no way. I didn't see it happening. You clearly, obviously, you're a fan of the team, so you knew there were some rumblings and grumblings going on that I wasn't privy to. So you kind of had a little bit of an in there, and it did happen. It was a shock to me, as most NFL fans. It was a shock. Hawks Commanders, been a member for 14 months. Who writes, Panthers should hire Jay Gruden. Did you just make a funny? Huh? Did you just make a funny, Hawk? You made a funny. Lang Hughes, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, local reporters think Peters and Ben Johnson will be the combo. I I got a lot to say about that whole situation. I'm gonna save it for the night, but I got a lot to say about all of that stuff. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's moving very rapidly, though. I did not think we would be in the final stages of hiring our. This could happen tomorrow, for all we know. Like, this thing is moving expeditiously. Okay, I am shocked at how fast they're moving. Josh is not effing around. Let's see. I left off right here. Top Flight writes, we'll probably be moving off of Mike Williams and or Joey Bosa, plus extending Mac and Keenan. If you tell me that, because you can win without Bosa. He's never there. It's almost like he doesn't exist for me now. Mike Williams is a whole nother animal, because you lose a lot offensively. And I know he wasn't there this year, and you got to see what life is like without him. But I don't see Johnston filling his role. To me, Mike Williams is the best 50-50 go-getter in the league. And when he goes up, it's 70-30, 80-20. You lose that. Herbert trusts him down the field. So I think losing that is big. But you proved this year that you can survive without him. But if I had to pick somebody to go, it wouldn't be him. But obviously the contract you signed him to and that situation, you might not have a choice. And that's why I said I need to see what is being done before I can elevate the Chargers to the #1 spot, because there's some decisions financially that have to be made that you may not want to get rid of that player, but that's the kind of financial bind we're in. So we got to do what we got to do. If you tell me that that's what's happening, I'd probably elevate them to 1. Now, Keenan's got to stay healthy, because you now don't have any Mike Williams. The reason you were able to survive without Mike Williams is because Keenan was Keenan last year. But what happens if Keenan isn't Keenan and he goes back to where he was 2 years ago, and Mike Williams isn't there? Now what? Now you're relying on Josh Palmer and Johnston? Like, that's some really scary. That's some scary hours, bro. That's some really nasty work. I don't know. That's a little questionable for me. We'll see what happens, because now you rely heavily on 13 again. Let's see. Let's see. All right. I was having a very spirited debate in this comment section. I love it. The beauty of it is none of this is addressed to me. So we can keep it pushing. All right. All right. I think that might be it for me. I can go peace out. All right. Derek B writes, the Patriots' job is #1 because it's the only organization that can truly say that winning the Super Bowl is the standard. I don't disagree with that assessment of what the standard is in New England, but it's not the #1 job because they don't have a quarterback and they're not in a position to get the one that they may like. And we've already seen what they're like without that guy. Now, again, they get Jaden Daniels, and we'll see what happens. I don't love their roster, too. That's another thing. Their roster is solid. It's not great. It needs work on both sides of the ball. Defensively, I think they're a lot further along than offensively. You can do some things with that defense, I think. 1 or 2 pieces here or there, and I think you could see the Patriots be a really formidable defense. It's already not a bad group as is. You get some guys back healthy like Matthew Judon, and it could change with the way that Christian Barmore was playing this year. And you get Gonzalez back, and he's playing like he was prior to the injury. And you got Jabril Peppers. It's some stuff on that defense. Offensively, it needs work, man. It ain't one receiver on that roster. And I like Devontae Parker. Juju Smith-Schuster, I don't know what you're going to get out of him. They were already saying that his knees were bad when they signed him, and he didn't play hardly any this year. I don't really know what you have offensively there that would make it an attractive job. Plus, you don't have a quarterback yet. But again, you're in a position to get one. I can't put them at one. I wouldn't put them at one. But I get the mindset is cool, but you still need the players to carry that out. Still need the players to carry that out. OKG2000, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, concerned about bringing in NBA people to fill to an NFL team. We can talk about that on tonight. He's not a part of our staff. He's not a part of our front office. He's a part of this group that he's put together, this committee, this advisory committee that he's put together to help him hire guys to fill out their front office. So he'll be around, but he's not a part. Like if you look at our staff on the team website, he's not going to be a part of the staff. He will be like an advisor to the owner, Josh Harris. And if that nets you a role in the staff, so be it. But he's not going to be. Bob Myers isn't going to be making football decisions. Okay, he's not going to be helping them make like massive football decisions. What he's saying is, you're going to help me find the right person because you're good at identifying who the right person for the job is. Not necessarily from a football acumen standpoint, because he doesn't have that. What he does have is the ability to read people to determine if this guy has the winning gene or not. If he's a guy that can be a leader of men, Bob Myers, that transcends sports, right? So basketball, football, baseball, he's like, Bob can help me with that. He's a winner. Bob's a winner. I agree with that. King of the Bluegrass. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, I still believe the biggest decision is the number 2 pick above all else. It could be. Again, I think the person making the decision about the number 2 pick overall is the biggest decision, because you can have the number 2 pick, but if the person making the decision is an ignoramus, i.e., the Panthers had the number 1 pick in the draft. Their owner, David Tepper, decided that they were taking Bryce Young. They had the number 1 pick. Their owner blew it. Maybe he blew it. I can't say that. But he vetoed everybody in the building and pretty much pulled a Dan Snyder and said, nah, we taking Bryce Young. I find it hard to believe that your head coach is reading is shooting a hostage video in week 7 or 8, and he wanted Bryce Young. I find it hard to believe. So I still think the person making the decision at 2 is more important than the actual player that they get. Now, look, you get the right quarterback, and that can transcend your franchise. But who took that guy? That guy gets just as much credit as the guy that comes in and does it. Rocky D, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, please ignore the hashtag post. Do you think it's possible for Adam Peters and Ian Cunningham to have a GM football operations combo? No, I don't. I would be floored if that happened. Nobody, first of all, you know what? I'm going to answer that later on tonight. I'll just say this. I'll say this because you super chatted, and I want to make sure that this is satisfied. If I'm Adam Peters, I'm not leaving San Francisco to then run a program where somebody else may get the credit for the things that are going on. You see what I'm saying here? Like, while he was like one of the chiefs in San Francisco, one of the guys that was largely responsible for their success, nobody ever says, well, man, what a move by Adam Peters in San Francisco. It's what a move by John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, right? Adam Peters isn't getting any credit for that. He's sick and tired of that. which is why I think he's thinking about leaving San Francisco. Now, I've told you that they were going to promote him, but if you're an alpha, you're like, bro, I don't want to be in your shadow anymore, because even if you promote me to GM and you're still presiding over me as team president, they're still going to attribute success here to you. I need to be my own guy. Same for Ian Cunningham. I leave Chicago from underneath Ryan Poles and come here, and I still might be worried about them giving all my credit to Adam Peters, and I might be the one doing all the work. I don't see. It's one position. It ain't two. And just know we already have a GM. You can't hire another GM if you already have one. Until they fire Martin Mayhew, we technically, which is why they keep calling it the head of football operations, because you can't technically hire a GM if you already have one. Somebody's already actively filling that role right now. Now, obviously, you could change Martin Mayhew's title if you wanted to make the new guy the GM, but we already have it. That's why they keep calling it head of football operations. So we'll see. We'll see. Because for instance, let's say they brought back Mayhew and Hurney and kept them in their current roles. Ain't nobody giving them credit for shit. We have success. That shit going straight to Adam Peters. That shit going straight to Ian Cunningham. Whomever they hire is the head of football operations. Ain't not 1 ounce of credit is going to Martin Mayhew or Marty Hurney. Not a single shred of it. That's what you should want if you're Peters or Cunningham, not somebody else taking some of your credit or all of it. All right. All right, yeah, let's get out of here. I'm about to get out of here now. So for the rest of y'all, I appreciate y'all chopping it up with the kid. Look forward to chopping it up with y'all tonight. We gonna have a hell of a show tonight. Lots to get to. It's down to the last two candidates. This is happening at warp speed. So much to discuss. So I look forward to chopping it up with you guys about that. If you're a football fan, which most of you are here, and maybe not a fan of the Commanders, I'll see you tomorrow for the LouieTeeNetwork podcast. We're going to be talking about the playoffs, and we're going to really dive in deep to all 6 matchups, and we're going to predict the outcome of those games. So looking forward to doing that with you tomorrow. In the meantime, though, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, on this LouieTeeNetwork exclusive, ranking the current head coach and GM openings. We've done that, and I've even given you the best fits for all of those jobs. Hope you enjoyed that. And if you're watching this on playback, leave it down in the comment section. How would you rank these openings, and who do you think are the best fits for these particular jobs? Look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Until then, you guys take care. God bless. Good night.